What's going on, everybody? I wanted to bring to you an updated version of what to buy first for X-Wing, and we're going to be talking about the Rebellion today. So I'm going to be doing 3 different videos, one for each faction in X-Wing. This is going to be the Rebellion version, and this is basically for new players who are getting into the game and are curious where to start off. Now, I have done videos like this in the past, and there's so many expansions and different things and separate releases that come out for X-Wing that influence this stuff. And one of the things that influences what's on here is errata. So what I mean by that is sometimes because the game has been out for so long, something will become unbalanced, and Fantasy Flight Games will actually change the official wording on maybe a printed pilot card or a printed upgrade card or whatever. So if you were to play in a tournament, sometimes what you buy in the box is not actually what it is in a tournament scenario or any type of constructive play or any type of league, or if you're going to play in a store with other people or whatever. So I think that's important to note for new players before you jump into this game, that sometimes there are certain cards that are going to be different than what you find in the box versus what the new errated version of a text might be. Now, that's not an incredibly huge thing with the Rebels. It is kind of a big thing with certain cards like Biggs Darklighter, which has been changed. But if you are playing casually, and if you're getting into this game just to play with some friends or to play at home or whatever, you don't have to worry about any of that at all. But if you are interested in getting into a competitive scenario, I would strongly urge you to check out the latest FAQ document, which you can find at Crabbok.com under errata list. I'll have a link to wherever the most recent X-Wing FAQ is under there, as well as certain other games. But I also will have kind of some pictures of what the new versions of certain cards should be. But definitely check out the most recent FAQ. It's going to have a comprehensive list of all kinds of frequently asked questions, as well as cards that have been errated and what they now should read. So if you're interested in competitive play, sanctioned play, tournaments, leagues, things like that, or if you're starting out casual and thinking about getting to those, it's important to note, certain changes that have happened. With that being said, I am going to talk about this list, and what I'm going to do in this list is I'm going to have them in groups of like top tier, best value, and then, like high, very good stuff, kind of middle of the road stuff, and then the bottom tier. And what I'm using to rank these is a couple of different things. First off, value. If something gives you more than one ship in a box, usually you're getting more value out of that. Also, the reliance upon other expansions. There are certain ships that do really, really well, but only when you combine them with upgrades that come in this expansion and that expansion. And because of that, I don't think those are necessarily great first ships for a new player, because it's going to require you to go out and do a whole bunch of research and buy like 3 or 4 different other expansions to really make this ship shine. So that kind of, brings something down a few pegs on my list. Also, how competitive something is. If something is really, really strong and wins a lot of tournaments, it's going to rank a little bit higher on this list because that means it's a really, really strong ship in the game. But also fun factor. Fun factor is an important thing on this list because of the fact that not everybody wants to play in tournaments. So if something's really not fun but competitive, it might, gain some and lose some. Whereas if something isn't that competitive, but it's a lot of fun, it might be a little higher than it might, be on someone else's list. And this is, of course, just my opinion. For those of you who are watching me for the first time, I do play in tournaments and in competitive leagues sometimes, but I usually focus more on a casual friendly game. I like to fly casual. I do play a lot of friendly games, and so I'm not an ultra competitive player, but I do still try to surround myself in a competitive environment, so to try to understand the best of both worlds. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, and that's why I rank fun factor in ships just as high as I rank competitive value in ships. So my list might differ from somebody else who only plays in tournaments, and my list might differ from somebody else who never plays in tournaments. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And before I get started in the list, also I just want to urge you that this is just a guideline. If there's a ship or a couple of ships that you have your heart set on, I urge you to get them first, because ultimately this game is about fun. So if, like, for example, if my favorite ship is the B-Wing, and that was one of the first ships I ever got. It's not at the top of my list in here, but if you're like me and you love the B-Wing, you should definitely get a B-Wing right away, because maybe that's what's awesome for you and that's what's fun. And this game is about magical starship combat on your tabletop, so you should totally get whatever you want first. So I'm going to jump right into the most obvious thing that you should get first is a core set. Now, there are actually 2 core sets for this game, but I'm going to start off with the first one. The original core set has the red X-Wing lettering like you see here. The original core set has Luke Skywalker and Biggs Darklighter, and Biggs Darklighter has been errated. So if you get this red core set, you are going to see a version of Biggs that's slightly different than the one that's available now. It's competitively, it's a huge change, but in a casual format, it's not that much of a change. But there are some, there are some small changes there. But more so than this, I would actually suggest you get the Force Awakens core set, which is the one with the blue lettering, and it looks like this. This one is basically the same type of stuff. It's still an X-Wing and 2 TIE Fighters, but it's the T70 X-Wing, and it has Poe Dameron in it, and it has BB-8. Ultimately, you will want to get both because they both come with exclusive cards. For example, R2-D2 is only available in the red core set, and then BB-8 is only available in this core set. And so this is a great value. It's a great way. It has everything you need to start the game. It's a great way to learn playing. It's got all of your movement tools. It's got your dice. You'll probably eventually want to get more dice, but if you end up getting 2 core sets, you'll have double the amount of dice, and that's going to probably be enough to be all you need for most of your games. But you definitely have to start out with a core set. I would suggest this one. This one also has a different damage deck that has become the standard for normal games. So you'll definitely want the blue core set or the Force Awakens core set to start off. You need a core set to play, and this is the better one to get. But you'll eventually want both. So next up, Heroes of the Resistance. Now, this is a great pack. Again, this is also with, you'll notice certain expansions will have the blue X-Wing logo and some will have the red X-Wing logo, and the blue is basically sequel trilogy stuff, because this game does take place over the original Galactic Civil War as well as the new movies that are coming out. So this is the Millennium Falcon from Episode 7 with the modified antenna, and it also features Poe Dameron's custom-painted Black 1, his T70 X-Wing in the black and orange. Now, one of the things about this is you do get a little bit of overlap, because this is an expansion that has Poe Dameron in it as well, but it's a different version of Poe Dameron. The one that people most often use is the one from the Force Awakens core set, but this one gives you, for one, it gives you another ship. It gives you a T70 X-Wing and the Millennium Falcon, so you get 2 ships in one box. But the other thing that's great about this is you get a whole bunch of extra pilots, a whole bunch of new pilots, different versions of, because there was already a Millennium Falcon expansion, but this one gives you new versions of Han Solo, new versions of Chewbacca. You get Rey in here, you get Finn as a crew. It has a lot of stuff that's self-contained, which means you can use upgrades that come in this in this set to outfit the ships that come in this set, and and they all synergize and work together. So this is a great self-contained expansion. Between this and your core set, you can have a full list. So this is a really, really great first purchase. And if you are just especially if you're on a budget and you just need to buy one expansion so you can have a 100-point game, which is the standard amount of points that people use, this is a great first buy. Definitely my strongest suggestion for you is to get this one first. Next up, I'm going to say the Ghost. The Ghost is a really, really cool expansion. Now, and also, if you're a fan of Star Wars Rebels, you might get this one before the Heroes of the Resistance. But it's a really, really big ship, has a custom base. It looks beautiful. I know people who will buy this just, even if they don't play the game, just to have it on their tabletop. And this is another ship that actually has 2 ships in it, or another expansion, I should say, that has 2 ships in it, because it has the Phantom, this little attack shuttle here. Now, and it has all kinds of cool mechanics. This is a little bit of an advanced mechanic here that you don't start out learning the game with, as far as being able to dock this ship and then deploy it out the back. But again, there's rules for it. It's not complicated. It's not hard. It's just something that didn't come into the game until much later in the game's life cycle. It has all of your crew from Star Wars Rebels in there, so it's got a lot of cool upgrade cards. It's got a lot of upgrade cards that actually will affect other ships as well, but it's also very much a self-contained expansion, and it also can be built such that it will consume a lot of the points in your list. So if you wanted to have a list that's really just one big powerful centerpiece ship and then maybe one support ship to go with it, maybe an X-Wing from your core set, this is a great option for that. Very cool ship. A lot of fun to fly. You know, it has 4 primary attacks, so it can do a lot of damage. Really fun ship. Love it. Next up, Rebel Aces. Now this is a little bit of an older expansion pack. This one came out a few years ago, but it has 2 ships in it. And at the time, A-Wings and B-Wings were not seeing that much play, although I think, you know, they still were seeing enough. But this was meant to revitalize those ships and give them new pilots and new mechanics, new titles, new abilities. And it did a great job. The Rebel Aces pack has an awful lot of really cool stuff in it. Has some great B-Wing pilots, some great A-Wing pilots, and eventually, if you eventually get the regular A-Wing and regular B-Wing expansions, you're going to be able to, you know, fuse those together, and you're going to have even more capabilities. So it's just great because, for one, it's 2 ships in 1 pack. For 2, you've got some of the best pilots in the Rebellion in this expansion pack. Definitely the best B-Wing pilot, and arguably the best A-Wing pilot are in here as well. So, you know, you can make a case for that. But it's a fun expansion. Now, these ships don't see quite as much tournament play nowadays. I mean, they still do see some, but they're not what people would consider at the top tier for the competitive meta. But meta being the meta game, whatever people are running right now and what's winning in tournaments. But this is a lot of fun. You get basically 2 expansions in one, and a whole lot of cool upgrade cards and new flexibility for these ships. That's just awesome. So great solid expansion right here. Next up, we're going to get into the high tier, because I've kind of done all the 2-in-1 packs, but these are really good single ship expansions. The Azatuk gunship. This is the Wookiee gunship that recently came out, and one trend you're going to notice as I'm talking about these ships is that more often than not, the newest stuff tends to be higher on my recommendation list. This game does have a little bit of power creep, but it handles it pretty well. It handles it better than certain other games do. But this game does have some power creep. It's not immune to that. So as a result of that, usually the newer stuff tends to be really good. And this is a pretty good ship. It's very strong. It's very hard to kill. It has a full 180-degree frontal arc, basically, so it can shoot almost anywhere on the board without much difficulty. And it also can provide some support. So it's just a good, strong ship. It's not very hard to fly. It can't turn around, but it doesn't really need to turn around. It doesn't have a K-turn or choreographed maneuver, basically, that allows it to go and then flip around, just like you saw Poe Dameron do in The Last Jedi. So it doesn't have the ability to do that a lot of ships do, but it doesn't really need to. It's just an easy ship to fly. It's very fun, and very hard to kill. But yeah, a very strong, good value ship that you're gonna do well with this ship. It's also very competitive. Next up, the Phantom 2 expansion pack. This is a Sheathipede shuttle. And this is also from Star Wars Rebels. Also, you've probably seen these in the Clone Wars. This is a shuttle that is... In this show, Star Wars Rebels, it replaced the existing little shuttle that comes with the Ghost expansion. So a cool thing about this expansion pack is it works well enough on its own. It's actually kind of a utility ship. It's not really an attack-friendly ship. It's a very utility ship. It does a lot of good things to support your other ships. But at the same time, it also provides some additional functionality to your Ghost. Because if you have the Ghost expansion and you don't want to dock the attack shuttle, you want to dock this one instead, it has cards and rules to allow you to do that. So it allows you to change, it adds all additional value to a big ship that you may already have if you're going down the list. So that much is cool. So if you have the Ghost, this one is a must-buy. But even if you don't have the Ghost, this ship is still good on its own. It's not the strongest attacker, but it just offers a lot of support and a lot of utility. That's just really nice. And it also has a rear firing arc, so it can shoot out the rear as well, which not too many ships have. So that's pretty nice as well. It has some cool pilots. It's got 4 unique pilots, and very fun ship. Also, if you like Star Wars Rebels, this is probably a no-brainer for you. Next up, the Arc 170. This is a ship that's very familiar to people who've seen the prequels. This was a mainstay of the Clone Wars, and the reason this is in X-Wing, we don't really have Clone Wars ships unless, of course, they've been revamped and repurposed for the Galactic Civil War. A lot of times this is stuff that shows up in Star Wars Rebels, but in this case, they're using different pilots that came from a lot of the books and or comic books. So that much is kind of cool. So if you're a fan of a lot of the literature that goes along with the new canon for Star Wars, you'll probably recognize the pilots that come with this, like Nora Wexley and Shara Bay. So cool stuff. It's also a very strong ship. The idea, the mentality behind this is that it's basically been an Arc 170 from the Clone Wars that's been retrofitted and kind of upgraded to still work within the Rebellion today. And so that's kind of how they justify it being a stronger ship, because it's got new parts on it. So they took an old ship and then they upgraded it. But basically, it's a really strong ship. It does a lot of, it just has a lot of interesting ways to fly it. It's very competitive as far as, if you have certain other, it works well with astromechs. So if you have certain other ships like the Rebel Transport and you have, the stress bot droid that comes in there, it works really well in here. But it's also self-contained. It comes with a lot of upgrades that really enhance the Arc 170 itself. But there's a lot of different uses for the different pilots that come in here. But it is a strong ship. It's not easily killed. Also, it's very tough. It sees a lot of play. So I think it's a fun ship. It's also competitive. And I also want to point out that this is a beautiful, beautiful ship. The model for it is just gorgeous. You're going to love this thing, especially if you're in any way a fan of the ship whatsoever. They did this model right. All right, the K-Wing. The K-Wing is another ship that's both ugly and beautiful at the same time, in that it's not as sleek looking, but it's a really good sculpt. There's a whole lot of detail in this ship that really makes it look amazing. The K-Wing is a very competitive ship. It did receive some errata as far as the advanced slam maneuver, so a lot of times this ship was ultra competitive for a little bit while, but got a slight nerf. Again, if you're playing casually, you really probably don't need to worry about it that much. But if you are looking to play this ship competitively, you need to check out the FAQ to understand the differences and how advanced slam works now. But it's a ship that can take a turret. It has some great pilots in there. Miranda Doney is a really nice pilot. It can regenerate shields. It can drop bombs. It can shoot missiles. It's just a big, heavy ordnance delivery platform, and it's tough to kill. So it's a fun ship, and it can slam. So slam is a new type of action that it came with that just allows it to go, basically take 2 moves and not attack instead of move and shoot. So really cool ship, fun to fly, and I think they've been pretty hard to find lately. So if you can find one, you definitely want to snatch them up. Next up is, you might be a little surprised, I have the Scourge H6 Bomber on here. Now this is a scum and villainy ship, and the reason it's on this list is because this is a unique setup here where this expansion actually came with 2 versions. I do want to point out, though, that it only comes with 1 Rebel pilot. So there's only 1 version, whereas every ship typically has 4 versions. It's 4 different pilot cards. This one has 4 versions of the scum version of the ship, but as an added bonus, they gave you a Rebel version of Captain Nim. Now, Captain Nim is really, really, really competitive for the Rebels. Right now, I'm making this in January of 2018. The latest stuff we have is Wave 13, and nothing else has been announced. So as of right now, bombs are very, very strong. This is like the deluxe bomber. This is like one of the best bombers the game has ever seen. Probably easily the best bomber the game has ever seen. And Captain Nim for the Rebels works really, really well in that role. So competitively, this is a really strong ship. And it's also pretty fun to fly also. It's not so much fun for your enemies if you're overwhelming them with bombs, because currently there's really not much of a defense against bombs. And so that's one of the things I think is probably going to change. So if you're watching this like a year from now, or maybe even 6 months from now, it's possible that there has been a change to the way bombs work, and maybe bombs won't be so competitive. But right now, bombs are very competitive in the game. And this is like one of the best delivery platforms for bombs in the entire game. But it's lower on the list because there's only a single version, so you're not getting as much variety from this expansion as a Rebel player. You're only getting a single pilot, and so that's kind of a bummer for the Rebels. But if you think about the fact that this was a scum and villainy ship that also decided as a bonus to give you a Rebel version, that's kind of cool. So if you play multiple factions, then this is definitely an early buy for you. Next up, the Resistance Bomber. Now, the Resistance Bomber is from Episode 8. This is on the other end of the spectrum. This one I don't really think is going to be that competitive. This one is from Wave 13, the most recent wave to come out. It's brand new. It's very fun. It's very fun, and it's big, and it looks cool on the battlefield, and it comes with a lot of cards that enhance the bombing gameplay, as well as stuff that works really well with Captain Nim, like we just talked about. But this ship I don't think is that competitive, because it has a few deficits, like it suffers from pilot skill, and pilot skill is important when it comes to bombs. But I think on the fun level, this is a very, very fun ship to fly because it brings out new things that you can do, like launching bombs forward. Is a lot of fun, and then sometimes it flies into its own bombs and hurts itself by mistake. So it's almost like a clumsy ship from a certain point of view. I really enjoy flying with this ship. I have a couple of them, and it's fun to put them both on the battlefield. I eventually want to get more, and I could see a big epic game with a whole bunch of these and kind of recreating scenes from the movies. Really fun ship, comes with a lot of cool cards. Don't think it's that competitive though, so if you are more competitive minded, you might want to hold off on getting some of this ship. But it does come with cards that work in a competitive environment as long as you're not using this ship to equip them. But I still think it's a great ship. It comes with a lot of different upgrades, and it also comes with multiple versions of certain key cards, so you don't necessarily have to buy like 3 of these if you wanted 3, of a certain other card. So it comes, it's just a good value for what you're getting here, and it's a lot of fun. All right, we're gonna jump down into the middle category of ships that I think are still good, but not necessarily top tier anymore. And there's different reasons for why. One is this is just all-around a solid, good ship, and that's the YT-2400, or otherwise known as the Outrider. You might recognize this one from Shadows of the Empire, Dash Rendar's favorite ship. The YT-2400 is still a solid ship. It's still competitive. I think it's just been outshined by a lot of the other newer stuff, because this one came out in Wave 5, so a long time ago. Like I said, we're up to Wave 13 right now at the time of making this video. But it is also kind of one of those self-contained expansions that has a lot of stuff that is capable of working. It doesn't need stuff from other expansions, although it does use some stuff from other expansions and can definitely shine with cards like the heavy laser cannon. And there's different things that you can give to it from outside of this expansion that are going to make it work even better. But it is a good self-contained ship. It's just not top tier anymore, but it still does well. And it's also fun. And if you're a fan of a lot of the EU and the old school ships, I loved this ship growing up as a teenager reading Shadows of the Empire, which I guess objectively wasn't really that great of a book, but it was we didn't have that many books at the time, so I was happy with what I got. But this has a lot of nostalgia. Good ship. All right, next up, the A-Wing. The A-Wing's a classic, right? The A-Wing is definitely a classic. If you've got Rebel Aces, rather. If you have Rebel Aces, then, A-Wing is just going to give you an extra ship that you can fly, because don't forget, you're going to get 4 pilots, or at least 4, with every, just about every expansion that you get. So having multiple ships allows you more, ways to outfit them. A-Wing comes with good upgrade cards too, like Push the Limit. You're also going to get a really good pilot in here with Tycho Selchu. Tycho is really, really a good A-Wing pilot, a rival for some of the best A-Wing pilots, even that come in Rebel Aces. So A-Wing is a good, solid expansion, and A-Wings have always been decent. They've never really been the best, but I don't think they've ever been awful either. So picking up an A-Wing is always really nice, especially if you've already got Rebel Aces, because you're going to get multiple copies of certain cards in Rebel Aces, so you can use those upgrades to outfit this A-Wing as well. Similarly, the B-Wing. Now, the B-Wing is my favorite ship in Star Wars, but for a long time, it's been like the B-Wing has been kind of hurting. Like the B-Wing quickly got outshined by other ships having more shields and more survivability, because the B-Wing came in kind of like as this tank into the game, because it only had the 1 agility, but it had like 5 shields, and so it was really, really tough. And now it's very common for ships to have even more hull and shields than the B-Wing has, while also having other tricks and potentially even more firepower in some cases. So the B-Wing is a ship that has become outshined. Even with the Rebel Aces pack, it didn't make the B-Wing great. It just made the B-Wing a little bit better. But now what we're starting to see is we're starting to see more expansions that come out that have upgrades for the B-Wing. We're starting to see this more and more. Sometimes these are in other factions, though. So if you're playing multiple factions, you're more likely to get stuff like, for example, the gunboat for the Empire, has a cannon upgrade that can work well on the B-Wing. There's a there's stuff like there's a scum upgrade that you can actually put on the B-Wing if you have Ezra Bridger. In your squad, there's his Maul, and he can go into a crew slot on the B-Wing. Again, if you're combining a lot of different expansions together, the B-Wing has the option to become better. And little by little, it seems like it's getting better and better. It may eventually become competitive again, but it's kind of in this middle category where it doesn't really shine, but it's not awful either. And I love it enough that I will make an effort to use it. So I still think there is a combination of running Key and Farlander with Maul equipped and having Ezra Bridger in your squad that can make him actually competitive. So I'm holding out hope that a B-Wing is still going to win worlds one of these days. But the B-Wing is a great ship, and it's a beautiful model also. But there's only a handful of really good B-Wing pilots, but it's worth having another B-Wing, definitely. All right, we're going to go with the Z95. Z95 Headhunter is a swarm ship for the Rebels. It's not something that you've got to have, but it's nice because, for only like 12 points, you can get one just to fill out a list. Like maybe you ended up with around in the mid 80s for your points, and you're like, well, it's not enough for me to add another ship. Since this came out, it is enough for you to add another ship. It's a cheap ship. It's got 2 hull and 2 shields. It can be a cheap missile delivery platform. There's also some really good pilots. Aaron Kraken is a really nice pilot for it, and that can, after he shoots, he can give somebody a free action. So that much is always nice, especially the ability to give actions out in the middle of combat can be very nice. But it's not necessarily for a lot of people, for casual fans. It may look too similar to an X-Wing, so it may not catch your eye. It may not be pretty enough because it's not one of the better models that they have. But it's a solid ship, and I bought a bunch of these when they first came out to try to make a Rebel swarm, but that's not really much of a thing. It's better to have maybe 1 or 2. Just to, in case you want to fit them in as a missile delivery platform, or just extra ships to maybe block and get in the way and take shots. They only have an attack of 2, but that's, sometimes you get hits with them. So yeah, but they're a little squishy now, and that's one of the problems you have with the ships that don't have that much health, is that bombs are running rampant. So some of the squishier ships can suffer for that. And speaking of squishy ships, we've got the E-Wing. The E-Wing is, it's one of those ships that's never really found its stride outside of a single pilot. There's 2 versions of the E-Wing. There's Corran Horn, who's the ace pilot, who's the best pilot that comes in this expansion. And he's amazing because he has the ability to attack twice in a round. And that's huge, especially if you outfit him to take advantage of that. But outside of Corran Horn, none of the other E-Wing pilots have really seen a lot of play because most people say the E-Wing's overpriced. It's going to take up too many points in your squad and not leave enough room for other ships. And considering it's a ship that only has 2 hull, a single proton bomb could take it out if it pulled a critical hit or a direct hit. So, and now the way bombs are, that's more likely than ever to happen now. So the E-Wing it's tough to see, but when you do use it, typically people run Corran Horn, and he has the ability to be incredibly powerful. If he can find himself in that sweet spot and get 2 shots, it's great. So it's kind of if you like to live dangerously, this could be a great glass cannon for you. The Y-Wing. The Y-Wing came out at the very beginning of the game. I believe the Y-Wing was in Wave 1. first wave of addition of non-Corset expansions, and is one of the most iconic ships in all of Star Wars. The Y-Wing is all right as a self-contained expansion, but still sees a lot of play today. But one of the things that makes the Y-Wing better, and why this is lower on my list for what to buy first, is that in order to maximize the Y-Wing, you need stuff from multiple different expansions. Like you'll need the Most Wanted expansion from the Scum and Villainy set to get the new title for the Y-Wing that allows them to shoot twice. Or you'll need the K-Wing to get a twin laser turret. Or you might need the GR75 to get some astromechs that give Y-Wing the elite pilot talent, or whatever. So it just seems like the Y-Wing relies too much on other releases to make it good, or to make it really good. On its own, it's just okay, but with other expansions, it gets better and better. It's still not necessarily top tier, but it can fit in a lot of top tier lists. So if you're buying everything, the Y-Wing is going to be a definite good buy to get. But if you're only buying, if you're on a budget and you're not getting everything right away, the Y-Wing probably doesn't need to be one of the first things you buy. Now I'm going into a tier I'm calling the bottom tier, and I don't want you to think that these are bad purchases, but there's a reason. They're either maybe not that useful now. There's some ships that just are currently kind of bad right now, but some of these are decent. They're just not the best value, and some of them their strength really lies in the upgrades that come with it, not with this ship itself. So the Millennium Falcon. Now, this was actually one of the first things I ever bought. And this was one of the first. This has been near the top of all of my previous what to buy first lists, because it's a great expansion, right? Why is it so low on my list right now? And that's simply because Heroes of the Resistance has come out since my last video, and Heroes of the Resistance has a better Falcon. Now, granted, it's a different sculpt. This one still has the original dish. So if you're an original trilogy purist, you probably will want this model at least. But this is also good because it has engine upgrade in it, which if you're only buying Rebellion, I believe this is the only place you can get engine upgrade. But it's a good expansion. It's just, I put this in the category of not being enough value to buy early. Because if you have a budget, you're probably getting Heroes of the Resistance first, and so you're already going to have a Millennium Falcon. Like, do you really want 2 Millennium Falcons? I mean, you can do that. They won't be able to have the Millennium Falcon title, but you can have 2 of these, and have one just be a YT-1300 on the board, and maybe Han Solo is flying one, and maybe Chewbacca's flying the other one, or maybe Rey is flying one and Lando's flying the other one. There's different ways you can do it. But it's not necessarily, the best bang for your buck at this point because of, better stuff that's out there. But it is still worth getting. You'll definitely want to get one of these eventually, because engine upgrade is actually a really good upgrade. So if you're buying multiple factions, though, you can potentially get it somewhere else. But if you're only buying Rebellion, you might either want to borrow engine upgrade for somebody else first, or maybe if you can find an individual upgrade card on the eBay or something like that, instead of having to buy this whole expansion right away, that might be another way to do it. Next up, the HWK-290. Now, this is a ship that's really, I want to like it more because, if you ever played any of the video games from the 90s, right, like Dark Forces, Jedi Knight, you've seen Kyle Katarn and Jan Ors. They're in this, so this is like a straight up video game expansion, and I love it. But it's just it was an early ship. I think this was wave 3 for X-Wing, and it's really been outshined. What it does, though, it still has use. It still has value. It's a good support ship. It's got different ways that it can provide support. The problem is that over the years, there's been other ships that have come out with other crew or other mechanics that can also provide support. So now, while this was top dog in the support show, now there's 7 other dogs in the support show, and it doesn't shine as much. But as new stuff comes out, as new turrets come out, and things like that, this is becoming better. But one of the crippling parts of it is they made a mistake when they made this ship, in that they gave it only an attack value of 1. It's the only ship in the game that has an attack value of 1. So basically, you virtually can't use this guy for his primary attack. If you're running him, you have to have a turret, which adds to the point cost. And now, granted, there are some great turrets out there. Twin laser turret works really, really well on this guy. But at the same time, there's other places you can put a twin laser turret. So It does have some uses, but it's just not that great. All right, Sabine's TIE Fighter. This is actually a newer ship, and while it has a lot of great uses, I think this is one of those rare cases where a newer ship is really hard to play competitively now because of the bomb situation. The bombs are everywhere, and the problem is at its core, it's still just a TIE Fighter with only 3 hull and 0 shields, which means it can be killed from a single bomb. It's possible. Usually, though, it's going to take 2 bombs to kill it, but it is possible for a single bomb to take this thing out. So it's just rough to fly something like that. Now, that being said, it has a really cool paint job. If you've seen the episode of Star Wars Rebels where they use this ship, you're like, wow, they did it right. It looks really cool. And if you're a fan of Star Wars Rebels, definitely get this. But what makes this one actually a good buy is because it comes with some really good stuff. Like, it's just a lot of cool cards and a lot of cool crew that come with this expansion. So, a good expansion for its contents, but it's harder to actually use competitively today. So that's why I ranked this one so low. It's the U-Wing is up next. The U-Wing is a pretty... Okay. I ranked this one low just because it's underwhelming right now. Overall, as an expansion, this one kind of has a lot going for it. It's, first off, the wings move. So that's awesome. Like, it's a great model. I think it's one of the best models they've ever done. But it's a little bit of an underwhelming ship. It doesn't really do anything great. It's like, it's a marginally good support ship, but it's a large base and it doesn't move that well. It's not... it doesn't really excel in any one particular area, and I think, I just think it needs a little help. I don't think it's that great right now. It's not terrible, pardon me, but it's just not great. And so, I just think there's nothing that, like, a new player really needs this for. This is something like, well, when you've rounded out your fleet and you're doing really well, and you're like, well, I feel like buying something I don't have, then come around and get the U-Wing. But the U-Wing really doesn't need to be one of the first ships you buy. Now, unless, of course, you're just a fan of the U-Wing as a ship, like I said at the beginning, just come back and get it. Absolutely, come get it right away. Last, we're in the bottom 2 right now, the T70 X-Wing. Now, the T70 is a good ship. It's not a great ship, but it's a solid ship. And this one comes with some, it comes with an integrated astromech, which is great. It used to be much higher on my list because this used to be the only place you could get integrated astromech, but now you can actually get integrated astromech in the Heroes of the Resistance pack. So it's like you don't even need to buy this for integrated astromech anymore. It's not as crucial as it used to be. And for pilots, you are going to get some unique pilots in this pack, but really the best T70 pilot is Poe, and you get him in the core set. And you get a different version of him in Heroes of the Resistance. So there's really not a whole lot of necessary need to get this expansion, at least not right away. Eventually, sure, absolutely at some point when you want to, have a complete collection. But I don't put this one anywhere close to the top. And then the last one is the original X-Wing. The original X-Wing, it's really hard for me to try to sell anybody on this one. Now, the one really good thing about getting this expansion is you get Wedge. Wedge is great, but the problem is right now is that the X-Wing is really, it's the original ship for this game, and it's, like I said, the game does have power creep. X-Wing has fallen behind the most. It's probably one of the worst ships in the game, and really the only X-Wing that people were flying was Biggs, because he could protect the whole fleet, or the whole squad. And now Biggs just took a big nerf, so X-Wings are flown even less now. If at some point, and I'm hoping sooner than later, we do see an X-Wing fix where they release another project or another product that boosts X-Wings up, then maybe people will start flying X-Wings more. Then this one will rise in the ranks, especially because Wedge Antilles is a great pilot. I would love for his ship to be better as well. Whether it's a point cost reduction or an increase in hull or an increase in shields or maybe an increase in firepower, something like that, just to make the X-Wing better, that would be great. But as of right now, this is probably one of the last expansions you need to buy. Now, we also do have some epic ships. We'll talk about those. Again, they're really expensive, typically, compared to your regular expansions. But if you're going to get some epic ships, the first one I would suggest is the GR75. And this one primarily, if you just want the model, if you don't plan on playing Epic very seriously, this is still a decent buy because, for one, it comes with an X-Wing, and it comes with a bunch of other X-Wing pilots that you didn't have otherwise. You have Wes Jansen, you have Porkins, so that's cool, and this is the only place to get those. But this one also comes with a lot of upgrades that are good for your X-Wings. It comes with astromechs. It comes with a lot of really cool astromechs, and those astromechs can go on all sorts of other ships that can take astromechs, such as the Y-Wing and such as the E-Wing, and there's just some of them are really good, like R2-D6. He can give you an elite pilot talent. And it's something great for Y-Wings because none of the Y-Wings have the elite pilot talent. Or you can get R3A2, the stress bot. So a lot of those are used quite significantly today. But then again, you're buying this whole ship just for some of the upgrades at that point. So it's kind of an expensive purchase. And then lastly, the Tantive V4. It's a beautiful model, and if you're playing actual Epic, it's great. But the problem is if you really want to play actual Epic, you're going to need to get all the other Epic ships too, because what happens is this ship was actually really bad when it first came out, and it wasn't like Epic ships as a whole weren't that great. And then eventually, like by the time they made the Gozanti, they got it right, and they was like, oh, here's some upgrades that'll make all your Epic ships better. And so it's like you have to go back and pick up a Gozanti just to make like your Tantive V4 be able to equip some missiles and have some good firepower against all these little ships that are coming after it. But this also has some crew and some things that you can use with your fleet. Like it has regular versions of Leia Organa, Han Solo, and most notably it has C-3PO, who was used for a long time with the Millennium Falcon. Not used quite so much anymore, but he's still decent. He's still a decent character. So let me know if you disagree with anything that I've put in here. A lot of these, some of these ships you're just getting for the expansions or some for the upgrade cards that they come with. But most of this stuff, really boils down to get what you want first, and then maybe you can take my advice if you like. I'm also going to be doing videos for the Empire and for Scum. So stay tuned for those. And I do have a giveaway going on right now, so if you want to win an expansion of your choice for free in the form of a $20 Cool Stuff gift card, all you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my other videos. That's all it takes, guys, so make sure you do that. And I have those running all the time, so if you're watching this a year from now, still do it because I'm always doing giveaways. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you think, and make sure you're subscribed and click the little bell for alerts so we don't miss any future giveaways. Thank you so much, and have a great day.